Episode 9 of the Rational Hour. I am your host, Kyle, on this Wednesday, April 22nd. Andy will join me briefly to discuss the Iowa basketball recruiting credits from this past weekend, and then I'll break into my baseball coverage as the Cubs are hot and producing one of the best offenses in the National League over the past week, and the Mets are definitely not, as their skid just continues and continues and continues. Welcome back, Andrew, as you joined again to talk about the Iowa basketball recruits they got in the transfer portal over the weekend. They did only get 2 recruits this past weekend, opposed to Iowa State's 5 that they got in the portal. But Iowa State had a lot more to replace, as Iowa only had to replace Sturts and Banks, whereas Iowa State
Yep.
had to replace a couple starters, and so it makes sense why Iowa State's getting more. And Iowa reloaded with some 7'3" center that I think a lot of teams would have liked to have. And what are your thoughts on McKeever?
Yeah, Andrew McKeever out of St. Mary's, 7'3", like you said. The big guys in this portal cycle have been going for a bunch of money, so it was good that we were able to land one. Be interested to see how that works in McCollum's system, just because this past year he didn't have we had Trevin Urach, but he was really raw. We haven't seen him with a really talented, super tall, true center yet. Now he's going to have McKeever and a second year of Urach down low. So I think that's going to be a huge addition for the team just because play some of those Big Ten teams that just have huge centers and we couldn't even compete with it. So I think he knew that something had to change there and he went out and found the guy he wanted.
Yeah, and the important thing is to in the column system, as it is in everybody else's system, is winning on the boards. But I think McKeever, as he led the Western Conference and rebounded
Yep.
out at 9.2 a game, should be a good addition for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks are, well, Ben McCollum's teams are always really good at rebounding. And the fact that he didn't even have any true size that played meaningful minutes, this is a huge addition for him down low. And to add to, like you said, a squad that obviously losing Sturts, which hurts, and Banks, which hurts, but a team that's going to have a lot of the core back.
Yeah, for sure. And then they added, I would assume, which will be considered Sturts' replacement, and Tyreek Coleman. From the Missouri Valley Conference. And what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, freshman out of Illinois State, really good kind of facilitator. Like you said, that we're going to have to try to replace Sturts with. Definitely don't think he's Sturts level right now, but clearly someone that McCollum feels like he can turn into his next stud point guard. He's done it pretty much every year of his coaching career. And plus, we'll still have Caleb Holmes to run the point as needed to help out. But really excited about him. I think he has connections with McCollum, like his high school coach and McCollum know each other well. So it sounds like, and I think he even got recruited by McCollum when McCollum was at Drake. So I think they obviously had their eyes on Coleman and kind of knew about him for a while. So same thing. It sounded like Coleman was totally interested in becoming a Hawk, and they got that one done. And granted, part of me wishes they just landed whatever stud point guard was in the transfer portal by ratings, but I feel like that's never going to be how McCollum is, or at least maybe not early on. But I'm excited that we got him. And like I've told you before, I trust Ben.
Well, yeah, maybe McCollum wanted somebody he could build for a couple years, like he did with Sturts, opposed to, just going to the portal and getting the senior. Somebody's already proven, but maybe getting somebody he can build and learn his system for a couple years. Coleman did shoot over 50% from the field last year and 41% from three-point range, so that's definitely a good addition. And the question I want to pose to you is, when it gets down to the 4-minute mark in the second half, and obviously, we're 6 months out from when they actually start playing games, but it was up to Sturts to kind of create the offense. Because Iowa didn't really seem like they were doing much else. They just let Sturts dribble the ball for 15, 20 seconds. And then either he'd have to make the play or he'd pass it and somebody else would make the play. What do you think? Do you think Iowa's game plan will change, or do you think Coleman has the potential to kind of be that guy that can make the game winning, make the plays?
I think clearly Ben trusts that he could be that guy, but at the same time, I think you're going to see more of a couple of these first year guys in McCollum's system, like a Cooper Koch or Tate Sage, be able to just create something on their own, I think we're going to see huge jumps out of them. So I think it's going to be more of like a team effort this year versus just our necessity needing Sturts to make something happen. So I don't feel like this new point guard is going to have to just be exactly what Sturts was, because I think the core and the supporting cast will be that much better. Plus, we have a couple other weapons like Trey Thompson, who is redshirted, and some new recruits as well out of high school. So I think that'll all take care of itself. But like you said, I definitely don't know who that will be as of right now, but I think we will have that guy.
And I think I would say McCollum has scouted Poland, well enough, and maybe even what kind of what Cale Tone did towards the end of the year, where he got hot. Maybe he steps up and becomes kind of that starts guy when it comes down to the end of the game. But definitely a good weekend if you were a Hawkeye fan. Those guys committed on what Friday night it was.
Yep, Friday.
And you guys were definitely excited about that on Twitter. So
Yeah, I mean, we're waiting to see McCollum's first gets of the off season. So definitely some big excitement. I think he'll probably still add one more. To be honest, I haven't heard a ton of names, but they're gonna have the spot, and um, everything points towards him adding another guy. So kind of eager to see which route he goes, because we technically have people at each position now, but like, where does he want more depth? Or does someone pop up that could be like another stud and you just go at him?
yeah, and I believe that like the ability to enter the transfer portal closes today or something or tomorrow. I saw
Yeah,
that on
today.
Twitter. So I think that would kind of help clear things up as well, because maybe somebody will enter last second that maybe you know everybody else has their roster filled, and then Iowa still has a spot where they can potentially swoop in and offer him X amount of money and pick him up if need be.
Right.
But
Or a lot of people throw out the whole like European route because that obviously has more options that didn't have to be in the portal. But I think one of those two routes you'll probably see Iowa go for, either like a late addition of the portal or somewhere like out of left field that, you didn't even see coming.
kind of Illinois or a couple other schools
Right.
that go the European route. You could really even say Iowa State goes the European route, because over the years they had Lucas Steger and Salad Boris for a year, and then they have Torre now. So,
Right. And I feel like that's an area that it's obviously becoming more popular, but if you have someone like really good at scouting, you can find someone that simply because you looked harder. So we'll see if that's something that McCollum ends up doing.
yeah. So good weekend for Iowa, and we'll see if they add anybody else. Well, you said they have one more spot, right?
Yep, they could add another one.
So we will see what happens, and we will report on that if that happens. But this
Yes.
should pretty much wrap it up for basketball until the fall, as Iowa State has their roster full, and there's really not going to be too many other changes. We both know McCollum and TJ are staying put, hopefully for the long term, respectively. And so it's a good time in Iowa. It's nice to feel safe with our coaches and feel positive about our team heading into the long summer.
Yeah, especially with a lot of changes happening in the off season that both coaches were mentioned in some teams openings, and seems like that's past at this point, barring some crazy change. And like you said, future's bright for both programs. Be interested to see how the roster um, finalizes, and also see where Milan ends up, if not the NBA. And
Yeah,
then yeah,
for sure.
jump into the summer.
Especially now with the news that Steve Kerr might be retiring.
I know,
And rumors is Florida, or they might be going after Florida's head coach, which would
right?
be very interesting if Milan still decides to potentially go to Florida if he doesn't like the NBA route, or if his plan changes a little bit there.
Oh, you could have that kind of late domino fall because the portal had already been closed. What do the Florida guys do who are already committed to coming back and through the portal? Plus, Billy Donovan just left the Bulls today. So, a lot of possibilities that could affect the college level too.
Yeah, and especially just how that pans out.
Yep. Should be exciting.
It will definitely be exciting to see what happens there, and we will have to stay tuned to those that information as it comes about. The Cubs are hot, 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 as they've won third in a row since my last podcast. Led mostly by probably my favorite Cub ever since the trio of Schwarber, Bryant, and Rizzo got disbanded. Nico Horner, who's having a heck of a season so far, already eclipsed his home run total from last year. As he's hit 4, he has 22 RBIs. He's top 5 in RBIs in baseball. He's a second baseman, gold glove defender, good contact hitter, not really known for his pop, but coming up upon 22 RBIs from hitting from the leadoff spot, this kind of speaks to how the Cubs' lower part of the order is doing. They're just getting on base and moving the lineup, and then Nico is driving the win from the leadoff spot. But Nico's, the Cubs have lacked somebody that can get on base and kind of lead the team, and I think he's the best leadoff hitter we've had since Dexter Fowler. And I wish he would have started the season there, but Craig Counsell wanted to give Michael Busch a couple opportunities. Michael Busch has really struggled this year. But Cubs are doing well. Pitching's doing well. They lost Jade Horton to injury. But people like Shada is finally stepping back up. And Poland Rhea, who's kind of a journeyman of sorts. Never really a pitcher to do much, but a solid outing. We're supposed to get Matthew Boyd back this week, I believe, as well. So things are looking good for the Cubs, although they're still a game and a half behind Cincinnati Reds, who are also on a winning streak of 5 games. And they're 10-2 away from home, which is pretty impressive. And I got another RBI young guy in Sal Stewart, who's kind of taking the league by storm. He's doing well and across the board, and Cincinnati fans are definitely excited about that. One thing to note about the NL Central is there are 5 teams above 500 in the NL Central, and the American League only has 6 teams above 500 in total out of 15 teams. The NL Central is basically outpacing the entire American League as is. But let's take a brief look at the Cubs' 7-game winning streak and who they beat. They beat the slumping Mets, which isn't really that big of a surprise as the Mets have lost 12 in a row now in their skid. And they've beaten the Phillies 2 out of 3 so far. The rubber match is this afternoon. And then the other team they beat in this run of their winning streak is they beat Philly 2 games in Philadelphia. 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia. And they put up a lot of runs. They're averaging probably close to 5 or 6 runs a game during this winning streak. Minus 2 games against New York where they scored 4 runs and they scored 2 runs to win it. But they've had a couple of comebacks late against the Mets, and things are just really, really clicking for the offense right now. So that's great to see. And then on the flip side of being hot, we have the Mets, who are, as I said, have lost 12 in a row. They're 7-16 overall. They're 8.5 back of Atlanta, who's 16-8 in the NL East. Supposed to get Soto back during the homestand, but it's kind of a dire time for the Mets. They need to turn it around quickly here. Just not good situation for them. But then on the flip side, kind of in the same path, Philadelphia has lost 7 in a row. They're 7.5 back of Atlanta as well. And their run differential is negative 45. Their starters haven't been doing well. Their bullpen has been beat up a little bit. So that's also 2 teams that were expected to compete in the National League East are not really doing so currently. And the Braves are kind of running away with it as they already have a 5-game lead over the Marlins and Nationals. And I don't think the Nationals can be competitive long-term this season. The Marlins maybe could be, but the Braves are just so good with Matt Olson, Austin Riley. They got Albies. They had Chris Sale as their ace. They're supposed to be getting Spencer Strider back. They got Robert Suarez in the bullpen. He can throw 100. They got Iglesias. The Braves are reloaded and they're ready to compete again after underperforming last year. And other things to note in the National League, The Padres are tied with the Dodgers for first place, as the Padres are 9-1 their last 10 games, and they're kind of led by their starting pitching as well, but they also have people like Xander Billiards, Fernando Tatis, and a couple other people to lead them in their journey. The Dodgers, interesting enough, kind of there, even though they have big names like Ohtani and Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts, who's injured, and Kyle Tucker, they're actually led by Andy Pages, an outfielder who has over 20 RBIs, hitting over 300. He's having an extremely good season, and it's kind of nice to see that from a guy like him, who doesn't get the attention he deserves, and he's obviously a solid player, and but he's obviously never going to outshadow Shohei Ohtani, who is arguably the face of baseball right now. But otherwise, the National League Rockies still are struggling. Diamondbacks are doing okay. But then switching over to the American League, the White Sox have won 2 in a row. They're 9-14, and they have Murataki Murakami, who's hit home runs in 4 consecutive games, and he's kind of their bright spot. So he's doing really well for a first-year player in Major League after coming over from Japan. And the Athletics are leading the West, led by Shane Langgraves, who has 8 home runs, I believe now, 8 or 9. The Astros are still struggling at the bottom of that division at 9-16. And Cleveland is leading the Central, trailed by the Twins by only a game. Detroit has recovered and they're back to 500 after their slow start to begin the season. They're only a game and a half back. Kansas City, after coming off their major slump where they lost 7 in a row, they finally won last night. They're at 8-16. And then the Yankees are still leading the AL East, and that's kind of to be expected. Stanton, Judge, Cody Bellinger, Trent Grisham, Jeff Chisholm, they got all those people. But other than that, that kind of wraps it up for baseball. Excited to see if the Cubs can continue the hot streak they're on, and as this weekend progresses. And they will play the Dodgers this weekend in LA, which will be a very important series in some aspects. And they start their West Coast trip as they play the Dodgers. Then they play at San Diego, so all late games, except for that Wednesday, April 29th, on Getaway Day. And it will be a good test for the Cubs as they play probably the two other top teams in the National League, playing the Dodgers in San Diego. But other than that, that's all I have to report on baseball for now. And we will see what happens with my report next week. If the Cubs are still hot, if the Mets are still slumping beyond imaginable, and how the rest of the NL Central is doing, because that's really the main focus, being from the Midwest, and mainly the Cubs' opponents as well. And remember, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for sports-related content you'd like me to react to, send an email to rationalhomer@gmail.com.